Ann Dickason was born on June 1, 1985, in Cape Town, South Africa. She grew up in a prosperous family, surrounded by love and support. An's parents always encouraged her to strive for knowledge and show respect for others, which greatly influenced her choice of life path. Since childhood, Ann has been single-minded, empathetic, and responsive. Her bright smile and kindness captivated those around her. Classmates recalled that Ann was always ready to help, whether in school or in everyday situations. From a young age, she dreamed of becoming a doctor. There were always medical books on the shelves in her room, and her interest in anatomy and biology set her apart from other children. Her parents supported her aspirations, encouraging her perseverance and confidence. In high school, Ann began attending first aid courses, which further confirmed her desire to dedicate her life to medicine. She enrolled in one of the prestigious universities in Cape Town, where she graduated with honors from the Faculty of Medicine. Ann started her professional career at a hospital in Cape Town. Colleagues spoke of her as a highly qualified specialist. Ann approached each patient with a soul. Her sensitivity and sincerity made her a favorite among patients and staff. However, Ann has never allowed work to completely consume her life. She has always sought harmony between career and personal happiness. It was at one of the professional events in 2005 that Ann met Ann Dickason. Graham, who also works as an orthopedic surgeon in the medical field, immediately attracted her attention with his confidence, sense of humor, and kindness. Their relationship began with a friendship that quickly grew into something more. Graham and Ann complemented each other perfectly. He admired her dedication, and she appreciated his support and sincerity. A year later, in 2006, they got married. The wedding was a bright and solemn event that brought together their family and friends. Everyone who knew the couple said they were made for each other. The couple began their life together with big plans and dreams. They aspired to create a strong family full of love and care. Unfortunately, the couple faced some problems on the way to parenthood. Ann went through 17 rounds of IVF, during which donor eggs were used. In 2013, they became parents for the first time, giving birth to a daughter, Sarah. However, the baby was born prematurely at the 18th week of pregnancy and passed away soon after. After this tragedy, Ann decided not to return to her old job. Instead, she began working as a part-time assistant to Graham, a surgeon. This event left a deep mark on her life and became a turning point in her fate. In 2014, their dream became a reality. Their first daughter, Lean, was born. Her birth brought immense happiness to Ann and Graham, who plunged headlong into raising their daughter. Ann often told colleagues and friends about Lean's first words and steps and proudly showed off her photos. In 2018, their family happiness doubled. Ann gave birth to twins, Carla and Maya. This event was another joyful milestone in their lives. However, taking care of 3 small children became a serious challenge for Ann. Despite Graham's efforts to support his wife, the burden on Ann increased. The twins required constant attention, and the eldest daughter needed communication and support. Therefore, the family decided to hire a nanny, Maria Mendy Sagoni. She joined the family in November 2018 and worked with them until May 2020. Maria became an important part of their lives, helping to manage childcare and contributing to their daily routine. Graham, in turn, tried to balance work with participation in family life. He was a good father who found time to play with the children and helped Ann with daily tasks. However, his professional duties often required him to work long hours, increasing the workload on Ann. Despite these challenges, the couple tried to spend as much time together as possible, organizing family picnics, walks, and holidays. However, behind the facade of happiness, Ann had been struggling with depression for many years. In 2015, she was diagnosed with a severe depressive episode with severe anxiety, associated with postpartum depression after the loss of her first child, Sarah. It was reported that Ann suffered from memories of losing her daughter, insomnia, crying, suicidal thoughts, panic attacks, increased anxiety, emotional withdrawal, and obsessive thoughts. These problems persisted even after the birth of her twin daughters and were exacerbated by medical difficulties, such as Carla's congenital cleft palate. In May 2019, Ann sought help from a psychiatrist, reporting frightening thoughts related to her children. These thoughts appeared after a stressful situation. She and the babysitter had difficulty putting the twins to bed. Lauren admitted that she felt exhausted, especially because of the behavior of Carla, whom she described as a difficult child. According to her, Carla often attacked her, bit her, and spanked her. Lauren's friends and family noticed that she became more withdrawn and depressed, although she never talked about it. Lauren tried to appear strong, hiding her inner feelings even from those closest to her. The family had moved to New Zealand from South Africa just a few weeks before the tragedy in 2021. The family decided to take a big step in their lives to move to New Zealand. Graham had received a lucrative job offer, and they hoped that life in Timaru would be the beginning of a new, more stable chapter in their history. Timaru, a calm and picturesque town, offered a safe and stable environment for their growing children. Lauren also saw this as an opportunity for renewal. She planned to pursue a career as a doctor, and the children could grow up in a safe and prosperous environment. The family settled in a cozy house in Timaru. Graham became actively involved in his work, and Lauren spent her days with the children, taking care of their upbringing. From the outside, everything seemed harmonious: a prosperous family, loving parents, and children pleasing with their laughter. But behind the whole picture, there was an internal struggle that Lauren waged every day. The move turned out to be much more difficult than the family had expected for Lauren, who was used to the support of relatives and friends in South Africa. Life in a new country seemed unusually lonely. Unlike her husband, she did not have the opportunity to communicate with new people on a daily basis and build social connections. Most of her time was spent within the walls of the house, taking care of 3 children, which increased the feeling of isolation. Living with 3 small children, despite all the joy they brought, required a lot of effort. Lionel, the 6-year-old eldest daughter, started going to school, which added new responsibilities to Lauren. Carla and Maya, the 2-year-old twins, needed constant attention. Every day was scheduled to the minute: Lionel's morning school fees, classes with the twins, cooking, cleaning, playing games, and putting the children to bed. In this endless cycle of responsibilities, Lauren began to lose time for herself. She did not have time to rest or do things that brought her joy, which further aggravated her feeling of fatigue. In July, one of Lauren's friends sent her a TikTok video where a mother reads a poem called "Mom Needs a Minute" about the struggle with raising her children and the chaos inside her brain. Dickason replied, "Amazing, that's how I feel." For several years, Lauren had been struggling with depression, which was diagnosed back in South Africa. Before moving, she visited a therapist and took medication, which helped her cope with emotional difficulties. However, her mood improved between the end of 2020 and June 2021. Without consulting a doctor, Lauren stopped taking antidepressants in March 2021, but subsequently resumed taking medications in August 2021 when her thoughts caused a new wave of anxiety. During her stay in Timaru, Lauren felt unhappy. She did not like the peculiarities of the local culture, as well as the condition of the rented housing, which she described, to put it mildly, as small and uncomfortable. She also expressed concerns about the future of her children, suggesting that they might face cyberbullying. Additionally, Dickason drew parallels between the treatment of indigenous Maori peoples and apartheid in South Africa, which only increased her regret about immigrating to New Zealand. Her experiences reached such proportions that they began to develop into delusional ideas reinforced by depression. Lauren became more and more withdrawn, less and less sharing her thoughts, even with her loved ones. Her inner feelings and feelings of loneliness increased anxiety, which prevented her from enjoying moments with the children. Gloomy thoughts caused her more and more stress. Graham, who sincerely loved Lauren and supported her, also faced difficulties adapting. The new job required a lot of time and effort from him, and he often stayed late at work or returned home tired. Despite this, he tried to spend time with his family as much as possible. However, his busy schedule made their interaction less intimate than before. Graham noticed that Lauren had become more depressed, but he thought it was temporary. He thought she just needed more time to get used to her new life. Love and care remained in their relationship, but the feeling of alienation gradually increased. September 16, 2021, began as the most ordinary day for the Dickason family. Lauren took 6-year-old Lionel to school and twins Carla and Maya to kindergarten. Graham, the head of the family, went to work, not anticipating that this day would end in a tragedy that would change their lives forever. The day passed in the usual bustle. Lauren decided to pick up the girls after lunch to take them for a walk in the local botanical garden so they could frolic and get some fresh air. Lionel enthusiastically took up the slides and swings, while the twins ran after each other on the grass. Lauren watched them from the bench, sometimes taking photos, but increasingly, her gaze became distracted. She found the bodies of her children, of her 3 children, when she came back home during this trip. Lauren allegedly found out that some boy was taking photos of her children. This incident led her to believe that New Zealand was as dangerous as South Africa, where she had previously lived. When she returned home, she cooked dinner and went about her evening chores, cleaning toys, getting the girls ready for bed, but her dark thoughts haunted her. Meanwhile, Graham went to dinner with colleagues, which had been planned in advance. He called Lauren before leaving the restaurant, and she seemed calm. She wished him a good evening and ended the conversation with the words, "We're coping here." When Graham returned home late in the evening, around 10:30 p.m., he immediately noticed that something was wrong in the house. The lights were on in several rooms, but otherwise, everything looked unusually quiet. Usually, the children were already asleep at this time, but he expected to see Lauren awake. Instead, there was a strange atmosphere in the house. Graham called out to Lauren, but there was no response. Flustered, he began to walk around the rooms, checking where his family might be. When he entered the children's bedroom, he was overcome with shock. The girls were lying in their beds without movement or signs of life. Their faces were pale, and their bodies were cold to the touch. Graham couldn't believe his eyes. He shouted their names, shook them by the shoulders, trying to wake them up, but it was all in vain. Gripped by horror, Graham wasted no time. He rushed to the phone and called the emergency services, begging them to come as soon as possible. His voice was filled with panic. He was trying to explain that the 3 children were not showing signs of life and that he urgently needed help. While the medics were on their way, Graham tried to resuscitate the children, doing everything he could for first aid. But despite his desperate attempts, the girls remained motionless. These minutes of waiting for an ambulance became the most painful for him in his life. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they quickly began resuscitation, but it soon became clear that it was no longer possible to save the children. Liana, Carla, and Maya were dead. This fact came as a shock not only to Graham but also to doctors, who were used to emergency situations but rarely encountered such a thing. They found Lauren in the kitchen. She was lying on the floor in a serious condition, with empty pill boxes next to her. Her breathing was weak, and her skin was pale. Lauren was immediately taken to the hospital, where doctors began to provide her with urgent medical care. Her condition required constant monitoring, and only the intervention of specialists saved her life. Graham, who was in the house, was in a state of shock. He could not find an explanation for what had happened and only repeated that he did not understand how it happened. "I was only gone for a few hours. Everything was fine when I called," he told the police. His words reflected the horror of the situation. The world, which seemed stable to him, collapsed in an instant. What happened that evening? Why did the children, who had been playing in the park during the day, no longer show signs of life? And what was Lauren's role in this story? The tragedy that occurred at the Dickason family home on September 16, 2021, became the starting point for a large-scale investigation. The Tamaru police immediately began work, seeking to restore the chronology of events. Every detail mattered. Upon inspection, the house looked ordinary and well-maintained. Everything was neat. In the children's bedrooms, toys were laid out and beds were made. In the kitchen, in addition to empty pill packs, investigators found suicide notes written by Lauren. In them, she expressed the deepest feelings of guilt, despair, and a desire to leave life with her children. These notes became key evidence confirming her intentions and condition at the time of the tragedy. Cable ties were found in the garage, which, as experts later confirmed, were used by Lauren during the crime. This discovery added horror to the overall picture and indicated the methodical nature of her actions. While the police continued to work at the scene, Lauren remained in the hospital under medical supervision. Her condition stabilized, but she was severely weakened and was under round-the-clock protection. The investigators were ready to begin questioning her as soon as her health would allow. Initially, Lauren refused to communicate, being in deep shock. Doctors noted her depressed mental state, and psychologists diagnosed signs of severe stress and depression. Despite this, the police insisted on obtaining information that could help uncover the full picture of events. Graham Dickason, the only surviving member of the family, became a key witness in the investigation. He talked about the move, the difficulties of adaptation, and Lauren's emotional state. Graham noted that she seemed tired and often talked about how difficult it was for her to cope with the children. However, he could not have imagined that it would lead to such consequences. She was a wonderful mother who always put the children first, but after moving in, I began to notice that she wasn't smiling anymore. I thought it was temporary and everything would get better, Graham said in one of his testimonies. Lauren's suicide notes became the main evidence in the case. In them, she described her feelings of hopelessness and loneliness, which intensified after the move. Lauren wrote about feeling guilty about the children and that she saw no other option but to commit suicide and take the children with her. Pathologists performed autopsies on the children's bodies to determine the exact cause of death. The results confirmed that the cause was asphyxia. The medical examiners noted that the injuries were inflicted in conditions where the victims could not resist, which was consistent with Lauren's story. The expert reports reinforced police suspicions that Lauren acted deliberately despite her mental state. These data became key for the prosecution. After the tragic events of September 16, 2021, Ann Dickason, who was under guard at Timaru Hospital, was gradually recovering. Medical intervention saved her life after an overdose of pills. A few days later, the doctors confirmed that she had recovered sufficiently for full communication. At that moment, the police were ready to begin an official interrogation to get answers to key questions about the tragedy. 2 police officers came to Lauren's hospital room. Their goal was not only to ask her questions but also to announce the beginning of the official arrest procedure. Lauren, sitting on the bed, looked exhausted and depressed. She was nervously fiddling with the corner of the blanket when the officers sat down next to her and began to explain the essence of the visit. One of the policemen said softly, "Lauren, we understand that you are going through a difficult time right now, but we need to talk about the events of that night. This is very important." Lauren did not look at the officers. Her gaze remained directed downwards. She was silent at first, but when the police mentioned the children, her face twisted in pain. She began to sob and tremble. I didn't mean it. I love my girls," she said through tears. The police continued to ask questions cautiously, without putting pressure on her. Lauren soon admitted that she felt depressed and exhausted that day. "The girls were especially noisy," she said, wiping tears from her face. "They were jumping, shouting, throwing things around. I tried to calm them down, but it only made their noise louder." She described how her emotions got out of control at that moment. Lauren said she felt trapped. "I couldn't do it anymore. It was like a black hole that swallowed me up," she admitted. Lauren explained that her action was not planned. Everything happened impulsively at a moment of extreme emotional exhaustion. Bothering a 2-year-old twins, Maya and Carla, and a 6-year-old daughter, Leanne, she described in detail how her fantasies led to insane consequences. After what Lauren did, she decided to commit suicide by taking pills. "I thought that if I left with them, we would be together," she said with tears. Her voice was trembling, and her eyes seemed empty. After the confession, officers officially detained Lauren and charged her with the murder of her 3 daughters. She was read her rights, and despite her depressed state, she nodded, showing that she understood the essence of what was happening. The police noted that she did not try to resist arrest. Lauren was transferred from the hospital to the police station for further questioning. She continued to cry, repeating, "I do not know how I could do this. They were all I had." The trial of Ann Dickason began in July 2022 and immediately attracted public attention. The tragedy that claimed the lives of 3 little girls sparked a wave of discussions about mental health, parental responsibility, and support for families in crisis situations. However, the key issue remained: what should be a fair punishment for a woman who took the lives of her own children at a time of extreme emotional exhaustion? Several relatives of Lauren and Graham Dickason from South Africa came to the trial, which lasted 4 weeks instead of the planned 3. The prosecution claimed that Dickason committed the murder out of outrage at the influence of children on her marriage. However, she pleaded not guilty, citing insanity. Dickason also told the doctors that she had not heard any orders or voices pushing her to kill, but made decisions on her own. The prosecution presented evidence found at the crime scene, including suicide notes, cable ties, and medical reports. Forensic experts confirmed that the cause of death of the children was asphyxia, and injuries on their bodies indicated the use of force. The chief prosecutor stressed that despite Lauren's severe emotional state, her actions were deliberate. He stated that she could have stopped but deliberately brought her plan to an end. It was not a momentary weakness but a consistent and conscious choice. The prosecutor stressed that Lauren's lawyers based their defense on arguments about her mental state. They presented evidence confirming that Lauren suffered from severe depression even before moving to New Zealand. Mental health experts testified that she was in a state of extreme emotional and physical exhaustion, which led to the tragedy. One of the experts noted that Lauren didn't see any other way out. Her thoughts were distorted by depression, and at that moment, she believed she was doing something right for her children. The lawyers stressed that the tragedy could have been prevented if Lauren had received the necessary support. On July 19, Ann Dickason testified in court, which lasted all day. He was also cross-examined by the defense. During his speech, Graham revealed that his wife, Ann Dickason, confided in him at least 3 times about her thoughts of harming their children. "I didn't notice how bad she was," Graham said. "I thought it was just temporary difficulties. If I had known, I would have done everything to prevent this." His words brought tears to many in the courtroom. Graham, despite the tragedy, expressed support for his wife, saying that her mental state should be taken into account by the court. Psychiatrists invited by both sides gave contradictory testimony. Ann Dickason underwent an extensive examination at Hill Martin Hospital. She was interviewed by 5 forensic psychiatrists and psychologists for 53 hours. 3 of them came to the conclusion that Lauren had serious mental disorders that could be the basis for a defense by reason of insanity. 2 other experts, Eric Monasterio and Simone McLavy, came to a different conclusion. They believed that Ann Dickason's actions were motivated by anger and a desire for control. In their opinion, Lauren could be afraid that in the event of her death, Graham would marry again, and another woman would raise her children. The defense psychologist's report described how moving, isolation, caring for 3 young children, and lack of support created conditions under which Lauren could no longer cope. She was in a state of despair, which obscured her ability to see other paths, the expert explained. After 5 grueling weeks of testimony and evidence review, the court handed down the verdict. Ann Dickason was found guilty of murdering her 3 daughters. However, the judge took into account her mental state and mitigating circumstances related to her depression and isolation. Ann Dickason has been sentenced to 18 years in prison in Christchurch, New Zealand. Ann Dickason was sentenced to 18 years in prison for the murder of her 3 daughters. According to the verdict, she has the right to apply for parole 6 years after the start of serving her sentence. The judge noted, "Your actions have claimed the lives of 3 innocent children. This is a tragedy that has left an indelible mark on your family and on the whole society. However, we cannot ignore your mental state at that moment and the circumstances that led you to this." The verdict caused mixed feelings. Some thought it was fair, arguing that Lauren deserved to be punished for her actions. Others believed that she should have been sent for long-term treatment rather than to prison. The Ann Dickason case has become the subject of many controversies. On one hand, it exposed serious problems related to the mental state of women after childbirth in conditions of isolation, which remain insufficiently illuminated and understood by society. On the other hand, the tragedy of innocent children caused deep resonance and a demand for justice. This story reminds us how important it is to approach such cases with the utmost sensitivity, comprehensive analysis, and careful study of all circumstances in order not only to protect society but also to offer support to those who find themselves on the verge of despair.